You don't want people to ask questions? No, not if you're trying to control and dominate the world. Not if you're diabolical, like we talked about at the very beginning of this discussion. So as we get to this last piece, dealing with neurotoxins, things that get the brain. Turn the light on? I don't necessarily need to have it. What I want to talk about here is, again, how people who sit around making these decisions, I mean, these are white men making many of these decisions about what the world needs best. Here they are, the most destructive mentality on the planet, and they're trying to decide what the world needs. So when we start talking about the control manipulation and how they're using this chemical biological warfare, it gets pretty devastating. You heard of Castro. They've been trying to get Castro by using chemical biological warfare. You heard of Patrice Lumumba. The movie just came out about his life and times, but it'd be nice if we read about him rather than worrying about an HBO movie about it, but you get the point there. They tried to assassinate him. So you got documented evidence and books talking about how these individuals are sitting around plotting and planning. The higher form of killing, it says, in the United States, some evidence at least is available to suggest the sort of uses to which clandestine chemical or biological weapons might be put. There were numerous planned attempts on the life of Fidel Castro using chemical or biological devices. So why would he even trust America? I mean, why would you want to go to a meeting when you know somebody's trying to kill you? That's why it's great to have Farrakhan with the support around him. Brother what? Khalid Muhammad didn't have support around him. Maybe something happened to him, took him on out. Amos Wilson didn't have support around him. Maybe something happened to him, took him out. If you look at all the warriors that have come before us, Asata Shakur living in Cuba. Well, she went out rather than being taken out. You know? It says botulinal toxin pills were prepared to be spilled into Castro's food. Cigars were contaminated with the same poison. Plans were laid to contaminate his rubber diving suit with spores causing a chronic skin disease. Probably the same stuff we're talking here because we're talking about things that affect the human. Castro said he's for African people. You know what I mean? He was the one fighting in Angola. He was the one going to the African countries to assist. It wasn't America. America was going in to jacket the place up. There were even plans to dust his shoes with a chemical which would cause his beard to fall out. So it was speculated, ruining his revolutionary appeal. None of these schemes came to anything, although in 1960 another poisoning operation came to closest to success when the CIA went after Patrice Lumumba, the radical prime minister, of the Congo, now Zaire. 6 months after independence, Sid Gottlieb, the man who had slipped LSD into Frank Olson's after-dinner drink, was sent to Kinshasa with a supply of poison. Much to his frustration, Gottlieb was unable to find a way of getting the poison into Lumumba's body, and the plan was abandoned. But they killed him anyway. By any means necessary, you want to go against the enemy. Last two pieces. In Chemical Warfare Agents, Toxicity at Low Levels, one of the newer books I have in my arsenal, 2001. Talks about cyanide. You heard of cyanide because that's something devastating. No, man, don't touch cyanide. It'll kill everybody. One little drop, boom, you're all gone. Good hand up. Non-lethal chronic exposure to cyanide can lead to neurological problems. Some neurodegenerative diseases are associated with chronic cyanide treatment. More recently, Hobson and others have noted a direct relationship between use of calcium cyanide dust and Parkinsonism in beekeepers. Beekeepers, okay, just working around some bees, working around this substance, and they just happen to be contracting Parkinson's disease. Now, what is Parkinson's disease? It's a disorder of a part of the brain called the substantia nigra. What is substantia nigra? Black substance, neuromelanin in the brain. These cells produce a chemical called dopamine. If the cells are not functioning, no dopamine is being produced, you develop what? Tremors. Your movement is inhibited. Someone says to go sit down, you can't actually go sit down. You try to walk, it's called festination, you're shuffling. You can't articulate your points.
That's Muhammad Ali, right? That's what he had?
So, they say Muhammad Ali has Parkinson-like symptoms. Okay. So the deal is, man, you mean there are chemicals that could do that? So they had, this is a book called Neurotoxic Factors in Parkinson's Disease and Related Disorders. Certainly not going to read any passages from it or read any documents from it, but it talks about MPTP, isoquinolines, catecholamine oxidase pathways, beta-carbolines, pesticides, metals. Basically, it's talking about things in the environment we can ingest, get into our bodies, go to this area, shut it down, and no longer functions properly. Okay? This first thing, MPTP, methyl parahydrotetrapyridine, whatever. Some chemical white kids were taking out in California. They create some synthetic drugs so they can what, get high. You know how the story goes. But these 20-year-olds were developing Parkinson's disease. So it led to some relationship between some element in the environment causing Parkinson's disease. Now we know that Parkinson's disease is primarily, even though black people get it, Europeans primarily suffer from it. So in the brain, melanin is functioning just like it does on the outside to keep us looking young, to keep our bodies looking fresh and viable. But the more the toxic stuff is accumulated, you have a problem. Even in the brain, you got a problem. So the thing about neuromelanin in the brain is that if it's absorbing these things, over long term, it's going to have an impact. But these kids were 20 years old developing Parkinson's disease. My point about this is Muhammad Ali was the baddest brother on the planet. They call him the greatest, don't they? The brother could beat, kick, knock any white, black man's body. But the brother would talk about it. He was somebody to be feared. Especially if you're talking about a people that could lead another people. And he gonna go be, what, in the Nation of Islam? Yeah. Who was he? Put him in jail. Take his belts away. The baddest brother on the planet. How could he be silenced like that? I know a whole lot of boxers that got hit more than he did. I'm talking about pugilistic. You can get Parkinson's disease from getting hit in your head. I know a whole lot of people got hit in the head more than he did. So if you're talking about these neurotoxic substances, just putting somebody's drink. If he's working out, maybe paint some things on the cabin, metabolism's up, things get into his body, and you're talking about over time, devastating. So there's no way I can prove that, right? But the evidence is there as to why something like that would happen. Speed bag, powder, right? Powder, the stuff just bouncing off of it and coming in, you know, all types of ways. If we know the mind is diabolical, shut that Negro up. The baddest brother on the planet. So I'm going to leave y'all, and we're going to open up question and answers. Yeah. But hope y'all got something from this information.
Since you was talking about Muhammad Ali and the heavy and the boxing world in general, I've covered a lot of that boxing stuff right here in Georgia and other places from the Golden Bloods and up. And I've had a opportunity to meet some of the greatest, even Ali. And what I noticed in particular being around Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Aaron, I can't think of his last name.
Aaron Pryor?
Who?
Aaron Pryor?
Yeah. What I noticed about being in conversation with these guys and drumming, and especially what I noticed with Joe Frazier and Ken Norton, for the times that they've been hit in the head, they don't come close to what's happened to Ali, and I just sit there and listen at them, even though, you know, the speech is there to an extent where you can tell, but you don't know if it's coming from that. And what I noticed that for Ali to get hit in the head less, it had to be something to really don't have this brother when he get in his late 40s, 50s, and 60s. He cannot be talking.
And he was the epitome of help. You know the brother as a Muslim was eating right, doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Meditating, praying.
Yeah, and I look at this commercial there, him and Michael J. Fox. Yeah. I don't know why they made that damn commercial, man.
I didn't see it.
You seen it? Yeah.
They're both on it?
You can't tell what Michael J. Fox got, man. But you can see where Ali's situation is.
Yeah. So I just want to bring it to your attention that things like that can really happen because people can be diabolical and cause that. That's what I want to bring to your attention to make sure you're aware of. Yes.
Oh, man. What an experience. You know, I have been inspired, and it's not
Good.
like you've been saying anything new to me.
Okay.
You know, I come from a school that really subscribes to the conspiracy theory. so-called Africa.
I hear you.
You know, I have been a victim of it myself in so many ways.
Mhm.
You know, you can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I remember when I was in my primary school and we were told to line up so they can give us inoculation. And I ran for 2 weeks. I wouldn't want to be inoculated by some strangers that didn't look like my parents.
Man.
These were all white folks, you know.
It's
Their
devastating.
white garments, and they had this machine and they were just pumping stuff in our armpit, you know. I mean,
I hear you. Our shoulders, yeah.
Shoulders, exactly. You know, and it was really frightening.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember telling my dad, I was 6 years old. I said, Dad, how are you sure these people are not giving us diseases?
Mhm.
You know, and they looked at me like, you going crazy. I said, but this is scary. You know, they brought this thing and they just shooting that stuff down your shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, today on the face of this earth, whenever you go out there to get, what's it called, a blood work to check if you have a TB,
Mhm.
99.9% of Africans come out positive.
For tuberculosis?
Yes. Now, what is their justification for us coming out positive? They told us, and this is a fallacy, I believe, that the reason we come out positive is because most Africans are infected with TB, and by being in contact with them, you become infected.
Right.
You know, and I know that's banana with cheese.
Right. But ethnically, it can relate to those
Exactly.
ones we just talked about, which are highly tuberculosis related.
Exactly.
So it may not be that you have tuberculosis, but you have what the so-called entities within your body that look like that.
Exactly.
Our bodies are not the same as Europeans. You know what I mean? So to go get medically tested, and all these drugs they're using, from antipsychotics to antidepressants, and the medications they're using on them, may not necessarily be for us. Because the system is different, physiologically. I told you I wanted to show you the melanin molecule, which many of you probably seen before. But as I said on the radio, as a carbon-based substance, it has multiple layouts, which makes it a really, really indestructible element, but a lot of things can be attracted to it. Can you flip that light down for me, please? Alcohol, methamphetamines, LSD, antipsychotic drugs like thorazine, Haldol, pesticides we just talked about. So people who work in, tomato plants or places where there's a lot of agriculture and sniffing that stuff, eventually they may succumb to Parkinson's disease. Opiates, cocaine, all these things can be absorbed by melanin and making it a different experience. Or if it's there too long, having impact at a later time in life. So there's some drugs that we don't necessarily need to do. White folks love the amphetamines and quaaludes and them things that are upper. We don't need that. If anything, we already high. We need something to chill us out. Something to, what's it, the cognac people drinking now? And what's all this stuff, Crystal, whatever. We need other things that chill us out. Oral history of the Vietnam veterans. Wallace Terry talked about, the white people in there killing folks up and cutting off ears, making necklaces out of them and stuff, and doing drugs to boost them up. Africans in that experience didn't need that.
Since you hit on that about the Vietnam War.
Speak a little louder too. I'm late on tape. Go ahead.
During the 60s, the Prime Minister of Vietnam then made a statement in a book called Doping Company, and it was in black and white and other books, that we're going to grow the best poppy to demoralize the American GI soldier.
Poppy, as in like poppy seed?
Poppy, yeah.
Heroin?
Yeah. To demoralize us. That was one of their interests. And I always had an interest if the Americans are paying them to do this or to influence them to do this.
Man. When they say demoralize, do you know what they were saying at that point? What were they talking about? To just disseminate so they wouldn't fight or something like that?
Well, to have a type attitude is, there and not getting a dog about why you're fighting too. But my thing was about to show the wrong side of us when we got back.
Right. And then a whole lot of people from that experience came back with drug problems too, That was a horrendous experience to be in. You're now then dependent upon something to make you feel a little bit better or to adapt to your situation. And alcohol was one of them. I wanted to throw a little piece on here about the alcohol thing because this is the last piece about the alcohol before we go. 10 minutes? Okay. The alcohol. Alcohol is broken down in the body, okay? Alcohol, I'm sorry I don't have something to write on here, but alcohol to acetaldehyde to acetic acid. 3 little ways. Alcohol, acetaldehyde, acetic acid. Acetic acid is harmless. You know, you go to the lab, smell it. It smells kind of sweet, just something in the lab. It's the aldehyde that ain't supposed to be in your body. It's the acid aldehyde that gives you the toxic feeling and the hangover effect. It ain't supposed to be in the body. If there's a problem with an enzyme to break it down into making it harmless, that's why people get sick. So a lot of Asians don't have the right enzymes like aldehyde dehydrogenase to break down the aldehyde to something that's harmless. So they then succumb more to intoxicating effects of alcohol than others. There's certain types of drinks. So maybe they give us the malt liquors, they think that we need the dark body drinks, versus Europeans drinking that scotch and all that other stuff that is so much dark body, giving them a different experience. But the thing about the alcohol is NutraSweet, which is aspartame. Do not take that stuff. Yes.
There was a study a couple of years ago by the American Cancer Society, and they showed a correlation between blacks and certain types of cancers.
Okay.
In specific, you know, some lung and throat cancers blacks were having, and they were saying that it was a combination of things that we were consuming, specifically the type of alcohol, including malt liquor, and the type of cigarettes that we smoke, relationship to the types that Caucasians smoke and drunk. And I mean, it was like one of the most telling factors about some of the cancers that, you know, African Americans are dying from, and we're more susceptible to. Even though European Caucasians have more types of, you know, they end up having more types of cancers. African Americans have fewer cancer, but more deadly forms of it.
No question.
Die much at a higher rate than Europeans as a result of cancer that we were. And I mean, it was in black and white. And I mean, it was like, at the time, I read 2 or 3 different newspapers, and I kept up with a lot of things. And like, I mean, it was so apparent that this information would help so many people, you know, if not change their minds about what they were doing, at least be informed about what they were doing. But I mean, it was like so little said about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it was a big study. I mean, a lot of research went into this. And I mean, a lot of the authorities that, you know, control what is going to be, you know, exposed to the public, you know, weren't, you know, pushing this information so that we would get it.
Yeah.
And, you know, going back to the conspiracy thing, I mean, just a couple other names that you can throw in of, you know, black people who are a threat to the system, who died young and mysteriously, you know, Bob Marley being one, and Arthur Ashe being another one.
Say the thing about Bob Marley too. They said he had stubbed his toe playing soccer, and then he had to get some treatment, and he then developed melanoma, cancer, right? So from what treatment from his toe? The other one you said was Arthur Ashe. Said he died of what? AIDS. I think his was from what? Blood transfusion.
Blood transfusion.
Okay.
As a result of a heart attack that he had, you know, while he was playing tennis. I mean, and there was no. I mean, it's like these mysterious things were happening to the. And another brother, Robinson, that used to be the news anchor for
Max
Robinson, who,
ABC.
I mean, and if you look into what these people were doing at the time, all of them were, you know, involved in a pan-African movement.
They're activists.
Yeah, they were activists, you know, and they were involved in a pan-African movement that really, you know, threatened, you know, the powers that be, because like the positions that they held, they could get to a lot of people and, you know, spread a lot of information.
That's why I'm saying I try to stay incognito so people don't, you know too much about where you're coming from and what you're talking about, because people fear revolution.
Yeah.
All this is change. Change for the betterment of mankind. But some people, again, we have diabolical minds to maintain a megalomaniac viewpoint that is to control the world. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say that as far as those who are in like the sports arena, especially fields of athletics, okay, these people have access to your body. They have access to your blood. You know, they have access to the very things, and so when they can easily control you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They take your blood, they have their private doctors, their private physicians that they send you to, and you just really can't afford to be too activist oriented, because they are so close to you. So that the Muhammad Ali's, the one who was very pro-black, you know, they had to shut him up.
Yeah.
You know, he was a threat. And it was also brought to my attention about the change of Michael Jordan.
Right.
See, a lot of people don't know. Now, this is just, I don't have the evidence, but I have friends. You know, these people are cloning. They're talking about cloning now, but they've been doing it.
Yeah.
So they put humans on the planet. But they were saying about the situation about when Michael Jordan's father got killed and he went into retirement. And that when he came back, you know, there's people who have studied this man's career and he wasn't the same person. So you have to realize these people can make another one of you. They can take your blood, especially, and so now they're doing this thing with most of the athletes now. You notice that they're getting a lot of the blacks out of it, and they're bringing in these Cubans, Dominicans, and stuff. But they can make another you.
Yeah, that's true.
They can make. They don't need us no more. They got everything from us that they need. You see what I'm saying? So you have to know that you put yourself in a very vulnerable position when you go out for these fields and you give these people access to your body because they know the melanin and the superior genetics that you carry around, that's a dollar sign.
Yeah.
And you know, and I've got tapes with Dr. Sabi and Jewel I Program that tells you that the new gold rush for this century is going to be the human organs that come from us and melanin. I just want to throw that in.
That Michael Jordan piece, there's a sister from North Carolina who talked about when Michael Jordan, when he was with Chicago Bulls, jumped from the foul line and flew and then dunked the ball, they said he's on drugs. Went through all kinds of tests. So at that point, like you said, if they're analyzing and studying and we don't know what's going on, who knows what information they utilize to go ahead and exploit that individual or make sure that he ain't going to go to another level, even though he really did in terms of the masses of money that he's accumulated, he makes, and his aura. But quite clearly, they understood that at that point. I certainly would have known anything about anybody studying him because of that. It was just a normal feat. When you start talking about looking at African people doing events, like sporting events, I was sitting there watching some college football with some white family, and the white guy was saying, you know, about some athletic move. I'm already talking to him about the black quarterbacks just revolutionized the game. So he's like, well, they're just good athletes. So I mean, there's okay, fine. Black guy goes down the sideline, catches the ball. Instead of going out of bounds, he threw the ball to his man who was running behind him, and the man went and ran for touchdown. The white guy said, man, that was athletic. I said, no, that was intelligent. A different perspective on the same thing.
That's right.
So for us, athletics, intelligence, it all goes hand in hand.
That's right.
So in terms of how the body works in a quicker fashion, it's because of the chemicals that are in there. And some of the chemicals that lead to make melanin are some of the very important chemicals that I'm trying to focus on right here. With NutraSweet, it's considered to be 3 molecules: phenylalanine, aspartic acid, and methyl alcohol. And how I'm relating this to the alcohol story is that I told you alcohol breaks down to acetic acid aldehyde and then to acetic acid. It's the aldehyde that's a problem. Look at this. Methyl alcohol is converted into formaldehyde. You know what formaldehyde is?
Preserved.
That's an embalming fluid. So acid aldehyde, it's the stuff that gives you the hangover. That shouldn't be in your body. That's why you got the hangover. The formaldehyde. Here you got NutraSweet creating formaldehyde. Well, what is this phenylalanine? Phenylalanine is a chemical that's needed to make melanin. Phenylalanine to tyrosine, leading to L-dopa, dopamine, leading to what makes melanin. It makes things in the brain and also makes things in the skin. White folks love that Diet Coke. That stuff is nasty. What does it contain? Are they getting a rush off of this? You know what I mean? We already have our system functioning at a certain level. We're now eating diets that the white man's created for us. So you look at phenylalanine, something that's created to be sweet.
Even your children's sweets these days, like candies and certain candy bars, it's got the NutraSweet in them.
So pay attention to it and don't buy that stuff, because eventually, as I said, you're putting in toxic stuff. There's a disorder, have it in the books, PKU, phenylketonuria. It's a genetically passed on disease, but it's recessive, which means it can be corrected by the diet. If you have too much phenylalanine in the body, do you know what happens? The people can become mentally retarded. Their skin lightens because it's no longer what leading to the pathways that make what melanin. That's a serious problem. So if you're talking about a genetic disorder from too much of it, well, what's happening when you're drinking it all the time? And people drink it for breakfast, they drink it for lunch, they drink it for dinner, they drink it all day long. And I hope y'all ain't drinking that stuff. Just leave it on that. All right? Good talk. So any questions? I'm certainly here to just dialogue before we roll out of here.
Just
Yes.
one other.
You go ahead.
I'm just going to underline one other point.